Well, the Aston Villa Chief Executive, Purslow, has questioned this policy in particular. Speaking to Radio 4's Today programme, he said this: it will be difficult to do much more, as the Premier League has already committed to the government that in the next 3 years, 1.6 billion will cascade down through the rest of football. The pyramid has always depended on the very top of the game, largely funding the ecosystem that is football. And that was obviously seen in the middle of the COVID crisis, when the Premier League lent over 250 million to the Championship and gifted over 50 million to Leagues 1 and 2. The Premier League has always really been the source of funding for the rest of football, and the danger here is, of course, as you said, killing the golden goose if we over-regulate a highly successful financial and commercial operation. Well, all the guests are coming in. Dharmesh leaves, Carvey comes in. Carvey, nice to see you. This is reading your email last night about this subject. Really fascinating again, this idea of a regulator. Certain people think it's a fantastic idea. Certain people, of course, are against it. How likely do you think it is that this is going to happen?
Look, the government are saying at the moment that it is going to happen. They are going to set this up. So that remains to be seen, whether there is the political will in the next few months to get this done and get it through Parliament and have it set up. But I think it's going to be very, very controversial. Just in the last few minutes, I've been speaking to a man who owns a Premier League club, and he said to me, look, we as a club welcome some of the proposals in this report, but some of them make me think we're living in communist China. That is the phrase he used. Now, the good, I think everybody would agree it's sensible for fans to have a golden share so that they could veto, for instance, the club badge being changed, or the club kit being changed, or the club's ground being sold. A shadow board, that sounds like a good idea as well, so that fans would have a greater say on ticket prices and the cost of replica kits. But then we get into some really, really controversial things. A new fit and proper persons test. How is this going to work? Will it be more effective than what we have in the meantime? I'm not sure, for instance, whether a new test would have done anything to stop the takeover of Newcastle United. Would people like the Glazer family still be able to borrow huge sums of money to buy Manchester United and then load that debt onto the club? Then we get onto the whole issue of licensing. Clubs are going to need a license from the regulator to operate. So they will have to pay to get a license, and they will have to prove that they have money to run their affairs. Now, what's going to happen if clubs don't get a license? For instance, this summer, would Derby County have got a license? Would Reading have got a license? Would, say, Birmingham City have got a license? And what happens if these clubs don't get a license? What, Derby are not going to play any more games? Reading are not going to play? What's going to happen? The fans are going to protest. They're going to come down to the offices of the regulator in central London, where it'll probably be. What are the fans going to say about all this? Also, Purslow mentioned redistribution, changing the way that the parachute payments are shared between clubs. Speaking to Premier League club owners, they say, we already give £500 million a season of the money that we make to EFL clubs. Show us another industry, show us another league that does that. And then when it comes to transfer tax, speaking to agents are just telling me this is an absolute non-runner. There is no way they want this to go ahead. You're going to have a situation where, for instance, Aston Villa sell Jack Grealish for £100 million, and straight away £10 million of that they're going to have to share with League 1 and League 2 clubs, for instance, and give it to grassroots football. They will say, we already do that. There are already levies on our transfer fees. We already give money to grassroots football through the Football Foundation. I think £500 million over the past 20 years or so. And they will also say it puts us at a disadvantage to clubs outside England. Because if we have to pay a 10% tax when we buy players, Real Madrid aren't paying that 10%. Barcelona, PSG, Juventus aren't paying that 10%. And the final point I would make is a lot of people will think the Premier League is very successful. It is one of England's biggest exports. It's one of the biggest success stories in England, an English business. Why would you want to change that? And a lot of Premier League club owners will say, we are so successful, we already pay the government something like £2 billion in tax every year. We're already doing our bit. We're paying taxes. We're giving money to the EFL, to other clubs, to grassroots football. So I think this is going to be very, very controversial. I've read the full report. There's lots of interesting things in there. There's lots of stuff. Everybody wants to, have fans on board. Everyone wants to have golden shares. Everyone wants ticket prices to be lower, replica kits to be cheaper. Everybody wants clubs not to go out of business. But unfortunately, we live in a capitalist free market society where the rules of business apply. And I understand football is not just a business. It means a lot to communities. We can't just treat it as a business. But reading the report as a whole, I think it will be very, very difficult to implement some of these proposals. And I would finish off by saying, is a regulator always the answer? We've got a regulator regulating gas and electricity markets. It's called Ofgem. I don't know if you look at your own electricity and gas bills, but if you had, everyone around the country, our bills have never been higher. So what has a regulator done for the average gas and electricity consumer? Not very much. So I would just say, be careful. I don't think a regulator is always the answer.